and good evening. I am Gushin Galan and you're watching Vantage. It's a tense time in West Asia. On paper, there is a ceasefire in place. Both Iran and Israel have accused each other of violating it. Much to the disdain of Donald Trump, the US president is eager to claim credit for ending the war. So much so that he dropped the F-bomb today. We'll take a closer look at how the ceasefire was reached and whether it is likely to hold. Also on the show, did Trump's decision to hit Iranian nuclear sites pay off? What does the ceasefire mean for Netanyahu and Iran? How is the conflict affecting Israel's economy? What do we know about Iran's new military leadership? Why airlines are suffering because of multiple wars? And how India is evacuating its nationals from West Asia. But first, the headlines. Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky plans to meet US President Donald Trump on Wednesday. The meeting is expected to take place on the sidelines of the NATO summit in Hague. Zelensky has not been invited to the main working session with NATO members. Trump has frustrated Washington's Western allies by refusing to impose new sanctions on Russia. India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh will travel to China this week, where he will attend the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit. In recent months, ties between New Delhi and Beijing have improved. The relationship between the world's two most populous nations was strained after the border standoff in 2020. South Korean investigators seek to arrest former President Yoon Suk Yeol. The prosecutors approach a court for a new arrest warrant. Yoon was formally stripped off in office in April. So far, he has defied summons by the investigators, probing his failed martial law bid last December. Uganda's Yoweri Museveni will seek re-election in polls due early next year. Museveni will look to extend his almost four-decade rule over the East African country. The general election is scheduled for January. Ahead of it, the opposition has faced a mounting crackdown, with many activists and politicians abducted and detained. And European lawmakers want to ban airlines from charging passengers for small carry-on luggage. It is a move which has been strongly opposed by the aviation sector. Many low-cost air carriers include only one small on-board item in the ticket and charge extra for other hand baggage.
Basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing.
After 12 days of fighting, there is a ceasefire, at least according to Donald Trump. We saw the first indications late last night. Iran fired a barrage of missiles at America's military base in Doha. But the attack wasn't lethal. Tehran had informed Qatar and the US in advance. Basically, it was a symbolic strike, which made one thing clear. Iran was looking to de-escalate the situation. Then overnight came another barrage. This time, not of missiles, but of social media posts from the US president. Let me quote what he said. "Congratulations to everyone. It has been fully agreed by and between Israel and Iran that there will be a complete and total ceasefire for 12 hours, at which point the war will be considered ended." He also went on to congratulate Iran and Israel, apparently for their stamina and courage. At first, Tehran denied this. They said no such agreement had been reached. But later, they made a U-turn. Iran set a deadline of 4 a.m. Tehran time, saying if Israel stopped attacking by then, Iran would also stop. Even until the last minute, strikes were happening. Iran launched a ballistic missile barrage. It hit the Israeli city of Beersheba. As the deadline came, Trump posted again. He wrote, "The ceasefire is now in effect. Please do not violate it." Unfortunately, we are hearing about violations. But we'll get to that later. First, let's look at how the ceasefire was reached. Trump says both Iran and Israel reached out at the same time. That both of them wanted peace. But inside details reveal a different story. Reports say the peace push began on Saturday. Donald Trump ordered strikes on Iran's nuclear sites, and after that, he proposed talks. He asked officials to reach out to Iran and Israel. Trump reportedly said, "Get me, Bibi, we are going to make peace." And on Monday, those talks happened. Trump had a phone call with Israel's Prime Minister, and in that call, he proposed a ceasefire. Reports say Netanyahu agreed as long as Iran also stopped. Trump then took that message to Iran, not directly, but via Qatar. Doha has very good ties with Iran, so the US asked Qatar's Prime Minister to persuade Tehran. Again, success. The Iranians agreed as long as Israel also stopped. Naturally, both sides are claiming victory. Israel says all its war objectives were met.
Following the directive of the political echelon, the ceasefire went into effect this morning. This morning, it can be said that the IDF fully met all the objectives defined in Operation Rising Lion. The Chief of Staff instructed the IDF to maintain a high level of alertness and readiness for a powerful response to any violation of the ceasefire.
Iran too is claiming victory. They said they compelled Israel to cease fire, that Israel had been defeated immediately. Reactions began pouring in. Major powers welcomed the ceasefire, but they doubted its viability.
We will only welcome this accord if it does exist. But after it was announced, there were reports of strikes, of an exchange of strikes between Israel and Iran. Therefore, let us not make any hasty conclusions based on fragmentary information. But we are for peace.
French President Macron is also being cautious. He says the situation remains volatile and unstable. Which brings us to the present. Is the ceasefire holding? Well, both sides have claimed violations. Around evening, Israel accused Iran of firing missiles at them. Their military said 2 missiles had been intercepted. But Iran rejected those claims. They said no missiles had been fired since the ceasefire was reached. Israel isn't buying it. Their defense minister has ordered strikes on Tehran. On the other side, Iran too is alleging violations. They said Israeli strikes continued until 9 a.m. local time, which is beyond the ceasefire deadline. US President Trump has reacted to the alleged violations. He says he is really unhappy with Israel, and for good measure, he dropped the F word as well.
I didn't like the fact that Israel unloaded right after we made the deal. They didn't have to unload. And I didn't like the fact that the retaliation was very strong. But in all fairness, Israel unloaded a lot. We basically have 2 countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
Do you have to respond to Iran on this?
Reports say Trump spoke to Netanyahu later. He told him to not hit Iran. Netanyahu replied that he couldn't cancel the strike. Instead, reduced the scale of it. Only 1 target in Tehran was reportedly hit, more symbolic than lethal. Trump later posted on social media. He said Israeli pilots would do a plane wave and return home. So as things stand, the situation is tense. There is a lot of trust deficit on both sides. There is a lot of anger and pain. The question is, are these ceasefire violations sporadic, or are they part of a systematic campaign? If it's the latter, all bets are off. Right now, we need cooler heads to prevail. All sides have something to claim as victory. Let's hope they call it a win and quit. So the ceasefire isn't holding. West Asia remains on edge. Israel and Iran continue to trade missiles. But for a moment, let's look at the announcement itself. The post where Trump declared a ceasefire. It came the same way as the strike order, with a post on social media. Trump is a known risk taker. But even by his standards, a direct strike on Iran was a major gamble. So did it pay off? Did the strike achieve its objectives? That depends on how you define success. If the goal was to hit Iran's nuclear program, then the US did make gains. Satellite images from Fordo, Isfahan and Natanz show visible damage. But that's where the certainty ends. Beyond those craters, the outcomes are less clear. On the day of the attack, Trump said he wanted to neutralize the nuclear threat from Iran.
The objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success.
Yes, the strike damaged infrastructure. But Iran's nuclear program remains intact. Tehran says its uranium stockpile is safe. The material was moved out before the strikes. More importantly, Iran still possesses the know-how. It still has the scientists, it still has the technology, and it still knows how to enrich uranium. That means it may be a matter of time Tehran has other sites and a proven record of scaling up quickly. So if the US goal was to halt Iran's nuclear progress, Trump may have only delayed it, not destroyed it. But what about targeting the regime itself? Trump did speculate about this. He raised the possibility with a post on Truth Social. He said, and I quote, "It's not politically correct to use the term regime change. But if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't there be a regime change?" These comments put Trump at odds with members of his own administration. But this wasn't the first time Trump took an aim at Iran's leadership. Before the American strikes, he suggested Iran was losing ground.
Iranian foreign minister this afternoon said if the U.S. is serious about negotiations, that you would call up Israel and request that they stop their airstrikes. Will you make that request?
Well, I think it's very hard to make that request right now. If somebody's winning, it's a little bit harder to do than if somebody's losing.
He was referring to Israel's Operation Lion, the first wave of aerial attacks. It took out several top Iranian leaders, both within the military establishment and the nuclear program. To that extent, these losses are damaging for Iran. But will they trigger regime change? That's highly unlikely. Instead, these strikes may have hardened Iran's resolve. Yesterday's strike on the US base in Qatar proved that. The attack raised tensions even further. It threatened to pull other West Asian powers into this conflict. And it put US troops in West Asia right in the line of fire. And even now, after he declared a ceasefire, there is no guarantee that it will stick. Hours after Trump's announcement, the missile launchers haven't fallen silent. Iran and Israel are blaming each other for the ceasefire violations. So this still remains a volatile situation. And the fallout from Trump's gamble is still unfolding. His decision to strike Iran split the Republican Party and divided his own MAGA support base. Taking risks in real estate is one thing. Taking them in West Asia could be dangerous. Because a single mistake could set off a chain reaction and engulf the entire region in conflict. Our next story is about the White House's greatest weapon and its biggest liability. I am not talking about a missile or even a foreign policy document. It is Donald Trump's phone. Because in 2025, diplomacy isn't just happening behind closed doors. It's happening in real time on Trump's social media. And Trump's officials know that, so they are working overtime to keep secrets secret. Like using decoy bombers and last-minute cover stories, our next report tells you why the greatest threat to mission security might be the commander-in-chief himself.
The mood in the White House Situation Room was tense. After all, US B-2 bombers were embarking on an all-important mission. A mission to bomb Iran's nuclear sites. But while the Pentagon was taking care of the logistics, Donald Trump was typing with the fervor of a teenager in a Reddit argument. A week before the bombing of Iran's Fordow nuclear facility, Trump was already foreshadowing events publicly. He posted, "Everyone should evacuate Tehran." For planners at Central Command, this was not ideal. To counter Trump's digital loose lips, they got creative. 2 bomber fleets were sent out, one flying west, which was a decoy. The real fleet during that time was flying east to actually drop the bombs. It was like planning a covert mission while your team leader was live tweeting from the battlefield. Still, the strike worked. Bunker busters fell on Iran's Fordow facility. And within minutes, before the military could even debrief, Trump was back online talking about its success. It's been said before, but let's say it again. No politician in modern history has wielded social media quite like Donald Trump. He launches posts like missiles themselves. And this is not new. Trump has always loved a post. During his first presidency, Trump tweeted around over 25,000 times. But now, back in office with his very own social media platform, he's posting like never before. There are no filters or fact checkers, or even aides nervously pulling the phone out of his hand. Since returning to the White House in 2025, Trump has posted more than 2,200 times on Truth Social in just the first 132 days. That's roughly 17 posts a day. Take the ceasefire, for example. After hours of mediation and behind the scenes, an Iran-Israel ceasefire deal was quietly coming together. Before it could be formally announced, Trump took to Truth Social and did it himself. The world was confused. Israel was still launching airstrikes, and U.S. diplomats were left cleaning up a peace deal that hadn't been agreed upon. In Washington, this wasn't called a victory. It was called Tuesday. Is this candor refreshing? Trump's supporters say yes. They see it as quote-unquote authenticity in an era of scripted politics. No spin doctors or consultants, just Donald being Donald. But authenticity, it turns out, is a double-edged sword.
By starting with Pete. Go ahead, Pete.
And sometimes the edge cuts your own administration. That honesty can compromise operations, undermine allies, and provoke adversaries. And there's a real debate happening about whether these posts should be treated as official policy. The White House says yes, but the rest of Washington remains divided. So while Trump's posts may feel spontaneous, the consequences are anything but that. Every truth he sends has the power to shake markets, scramble militaries, and throw diplomacy into chaos. And behind the scenes, his staffers now operate under a single, unofficial doctrine. Plan the mission like it's top secret. Execute the mission like it's under siege. And always assume the president might post about it. Because in 2025, the greatest threat to a U.S. mission security isn't a spy or a satellite. It's Donald Trump with 5 bars and a fully charged phone.
Let's assume the ceasefire holds. Then what does it mean for the players involved? For Netanyahu, for Iran, and for West Asia. For Israel's Prime Minister, it's a mixed bag. He ticked off 2 of his career-long ambitions. 1, to hit Iranian nuclear sites, and 2, to make America bomb Iran. In 12 days, he achieved both of that. Significant damage has been inflicted on Iran. Their nuclear sites in Natanz and Isfahan have been damaged. And Israel says the Iranian nuclear program has been set back. That too by at least 2 or 3 years. Plus, Iran's conventional capabilities have also been hurt. 1/3 of their missile launchers have been hit. Their air defenses have been destroyed. Top military commanders have been taken out. Even nuclear scientists were assassinated. And don't forget the proxies. Only the Houthis tried to join Iran's attacks. The Hezbollah and Hamas did nothing, which means Iran's axis of resistance was weakened considerably. And that's a win for Benjamin Netanyahu. But it's not all good. Israel had 2 states' war goals. One was to destroy Iran's nuclear program. 2, to neutralize the ballistic missile threat. And he has failed to do both. Yesterday night, Iran fired missiles at a US base in Qatar. This morning, they fired missiles at Israel. So clearly, the ballistic missile capabilities remain intact. As for the nuclear program, it could very well be revived. Iran says it had moved the enriched uranium. Reports also say they relocated the centrifuges. If so, the program can be restored. Also, Netanyahu failed to topple the Iranian regime. He floated the idea throughout the war. But if anything, the regime has become more hardline, which is why we called it a mixed bag. Yes, he weakened Iran considerably, but he couldn't land a killing blow, which brings us to the other side. This wasn't a great advertisement for Iran's military. Their air defenses were largely neutralized in one night. After that, Israel flew daily missions over Iran. Even the US bombed Fordo without any problems. America claims not a single shot was fired at their bombers. So Iran was alone and vulnerable. But they made it work. Tehran decided to use offense as defense. They fired multiple barrages of ballistic missiles at Israel. Different cities were targeted. Even civilian buildings were totally destroyed. And this was relentless. Iran used a cocktail of drones and missiles in the last 12 days. The idea was to overwhelm the Israeli defenses. And maybe it worked, because when the time came, Netanyahu agreed to a ceasefire. Nonetheless, Iran will have a hard time spinning this. Their technology gap to Israel was quite apparent in this war. And the regime, many of the top leaders have been killed. But Iran showed that it can regroup after such blows. Not only were replacements appointed ASAP, they began firing missiles almost immediately. So for now, the regime has survived. But we have to see what the new replacement leaders bring to the table. Reports say they are more hardline. As for West Asia, they would be breathing a sigh of relief. This war was happening over their skies. Plus, Iran was threatening to close off the Strait of Hormuz. This waterway carries 20% of the world's oil. Its closure would have hurt West Asia's economy. Some of these countries may have gotten dragged into the war. We saw what happened yesterday. Iran fired missiles at a US base in Qatar. The US has some 19 military facilities in West Asia. If the war dragged on, these could have come under attack. So West Asia will be breathing a sigh of relief. But the problem is, a new normal has been established. A normal where Israel and Iran openly trade strikes. And that it is not a good news for the region. Now, speaking of a new normal, what is the situation on the ground? On either side, things remain tense. People are in a state of panic. In Iran, this has been worsened by the blackout. Though it has lifted slightly, but mobile services are repeatedly going offline. Livelihoods have been affected across the country, and the prices of essentials have risen sharply. In Israel, many businesses remain closed, and people continue to go in and out of bunkers. Here's a report.
Amid ceasefire violations throughout the day, the situation on the ground has remained precarious. Tehran has quickly become home to damaged buildings and cars. And people have slowly returned to the streets, which are now covered with debris.
I haven't slept properly for 12 nights, and today, after 12 days, I finally came outside, heard about the ceasefire, and decided to go for a walk and such.
While Iranians remain hopeful, they are in a state of panic. It has only been exacerbated by a near-complete blackout in the country. 4 days now, the country has witnessed an all-encompassing internet outage. Gradually, it has been reduced in some parts, but mobile services are repeatedly going offline. Many people have no way to communicate with others. This has added to people's anxiety. Plus, it has made work even more difficult, because war or not, people need to earn a living. And if the internet outage continues, it is expected that many people will lose their jobs. After all, livelihoods have already been affected. Many private companies have not paid salaries, saying that they are unable to process salary payments. Many businesses have partially shut down. Tourism-related jobs and travel agencies have been particularly affected. Though apart from the Postal Service government offices and banks remain open in Iran, while salaries have been hit, prices are rising sharply. In smaller towns, food supplies are still available. But in Tehran and other major cities, there is reportedly a significant shortage of essentials, like bread, eggs, and fruit. As day-to-day affairs are no longer the same, fear remains pervasive. And this is not limited to the common people. The Iranian regime has arrested a number of people on charges of espionage, and residents are regularly witnessing arrests and executions on the national television. The government has also deployed additional police patrols and checkpoints. Amid a heightened security situation, authorities have been confiscating mobile phones and searching cars in major cities. Meanwhile, rescue operations are underway. This is true for Israel as well, where workers continue to clear rubble from the charred remains of buildings.
I was glad to hear about the ceasefire this morning. Regrettably, it's a bit too late for me and my family because our house back here was totally destroyed in the recent bombings last Sunday.
Air raid sirens have repeatedly sounded across Israel today. Residents who have left bunkers have been asked to go back in shortly after. Many businesses across the country remain closed. Despite this, for many, life has continued despite the uncertainty. People can be seen stopping and staring at the destruction, before continuing with their daily jogs and coffee runs. So on either warring side, people are grappling with mixed feelings.
I don't trust them, and I think we are in a very hard situation that we can be damaged again. I have mixed feelings because I want peace, I want quiet.
After all, both sides have borne the cost of this war. Whether in Iran or in Israel, people continue to pay the price. Both, in smaller ways, with the loss of connectivity or their jobs, or by paying the ultimate price, with their lives.
War is expensive. Everyone knows that. But the numbers coming out of Israel are staggering. Since 2023, Israel has been locked in a brutal war in Gaza. And this month, it opened another front. What was once a shadow war with Iran has exploded into direct conflict. So now, Israel is fighting on two fronts. And this war is costing billions of dollars. Its arsenal is being drained. Its defenses are stretched. And the once resilient economy is stretched to its limits. Let's start with the numbers. The war in Gaza alone has already cost 250 billion shekels. That's around $67.5 billion. This covers combat infrastructure, civilian aid, and lost tax revenue. Now, what it doesn't include is lost productivity, the shuttered businesses, and supply chain disruptions. Then came the escalation with Iran. Within just 48 hours, Israel burnt through another 5.5 billion shekels. Again, that's around $1.45 billion. And that's just the opening volley. Right now, there's a fragile ceasefire. But for 12 days, the cost was around $725 million every day. $300 million was just for jet fuel and munitions. That makes it Israel's most expensive military campaign ever. Then there are Israel's air defense. It has a multi-layered air defense system. Iron Dome for short-range rockets, David Sling for medium-range missile, and the Arrow system for long-range threats. So why are missiles still getting through? The answer lies in the volume of Iran's attacks. Iran is not just firing missiles, it's launching barrages. This combines different missile types. Some jam the GPS, some break into submunitions, some are launched simultaneously across Iran. So Israel must make split-second decisions on which ones to intercept and on which to let through. After all, each interceptor missile costs around $50,000. So this strategy meeting economics in real time. And then comes the bigger problem. Israel is running low on interceptors. According to some reports, Israel may only have 10 to 12 days worth of interceptor stock left. This is unless it is replenished by the US. Also, wars aren't just fought on battlefields. They are fought in balance sheets too. Israel has called up 300,000 reservists. That means they were pulled from their jobs and business. Every 100,000 reservists cost the economy 70 million shekels a day in wages. That is $20 million, and this is not even counting lost productivity. So the real figure is closer to 170 million shekels daily. That is $46 million every single day. Foreign investment is also drying up. Business investment alone dropped nearly 68% last year. Tourism is frozen, consumer spending is slumping, and all of this is affecting the overall economy. In 2022, Israel's economy was growing at 6.5%. In 2024, that slumped to 0.7%. Estimates suggest it could shrink 5% in 2025. Meanwhile, Israel's defense budget has nearly doubled. It was around 60 billion shekels in 2023. This year, it has gone up to 118 billion shekels. That's around 7% of GDP, second only to Ukraine. And this kind of defense spending comes with trade-offs. Public health care is now underfunded. Education budgets have stalled. Infrastructure projects are being shelved. The government says these are temporary reallocations, but critics worry that this marks a structural shift. Social spending now takes a permanent backseat to military readiness. So Israel may win battles, it may even cripple Iran's military infrastructure, but the cost is redefining the country itself. The country was once known as the startup nation, especially due to its thriving technology startup ecosystem. But right now, all of that is engulfed by war. And as the missiles keep falling, Israel must answer one question: what kind of state it will be once the smoke clears? For our next story, let's begin with a simple question. Who's really running Iran right now? Is it the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei? Is it the aging clerics of the old guard? Or is it someone new? A rising class of Revolutionary Guard commanders. Let's break it down. The war between Iran and Israel broke out 12 days ago. Since then, there's a lot of talk about regime change, about the future of Iran's leadership. So Khamenei has vanished from public view. Officially, Khamenei is still supreme leader. Unofficially, he's a man in hiding. Khamenei is hunkered down in a bunker. His location is classified. He barely speaks to his commanders directly anymore. Messages are passed through a single aide. And if he is assassinated, Khamenei has a succession plan. He's picked 3 clerics to replace him. So as Khamenei is in hiding, who exactly is running Iran? Well, there's a group of men calling the shots. They are military commanders. They belong to the IRGC, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. It is Iran's elite military force, part army, part intelligence service. But here's what changed in the recent days. They are not in the background anymore. A new Shura or War Council has been formed. It's dominated by IRGC generals. So the IRGC now calls the shots, quite literally. Since the beginning of this war, Israel has killed Iran's top military commanders. With that, the old guards is gone. The men who flinched but never fired, replacing them is a new guard. A younger, more hardline crop of IRGC commanders. They don't believe in patience. They believe in vengeance. And that has shifted the balance of power in Tehran. The new leadership doesn't want to dial things down. They think Israel's aura of invincibility is cracking. They believe American red lines are bluffs. And they don't trust diplomacy anymore. The new IRGC elite think Iran's biggest problem is hesitation. Basically, they don't want détente. They want redemption. And they believe that they are the men to deliver it. But what do the people of Iran think? At first, many Iranians were angry, not at Israel, but at their own leaders. They were tired of proxy wars. They were tired of IRGC's vast spending. They were tired of the collapsing economy. But the Israeli airstrikes changed that. People who once mocked the IRGC began praising their resilience. Exiled celebrities started calling for national unity. Even former protesters supported the regime. We don't know if it's fear, nationalism, or sheer trauma. But clearly, the IRGC is gaining ground in the public psyche. So what comes next? That may be the most dangerous question right now. Some in Tehran argue for restraint. Others want escalation. No one is quite sure which camp will win. But what's clear is that Iran's path is no longer being charted by clerics. It is being shaped by the military commanders. And there are some public signs of it. Reports suggest women are showing more hair on state TV. Religious language is being toned down. But if the clerics are finally being sidelined, it doesn't mean liberalism is on the rise. It just means Iran is becoming a military state. And there's a strange paradox to all of this. Ayatollah Khamenei was the father of the Islamic Revolution. He once warned against letting the IRGC take over the state. 46 years later, that warning seems almost prophetic. The very force that was created to defend the revolution is now defining it. Before our next story tonight, let me ask you a question. What is the biggest responsibility of the air travel industry? Is it to steer clear of unnecessary risk, to avoid uncertain threats, and this includes war zones? Over the past 4 years, the proportion of the world grappling with warfare has grown. By how much? 65%. Conflicts have soared in hotspots like Ukraine, West Asia, and Central Africa. And there has been a 65% rise in war zones. That's about double the size of India. With this, the number of no-fly zones have increased as well. And everyone from passengers to airlines are paying the price for it. Here's a report.
Over the weekend, the U.S. struck nuclear sites in Iran. So on Monday, Iran launched a barrage of missiles at a U.S. base in Qatar. Then this happened next. About 24 flights diverted from their route between Dubai and Doha, which is one of the world's busiest hubs. Qantas was forced to divert 2 flights mid-air. Air India suspended all flights to Eastern North America and Europe, and hundreds of flights were cancelled altogether. After all, the damage of warring strikes is not limited to the battlefield. It can reverberate across the world. And this is exactly what is happening with air travel. This is what global air traffic looks like right now. You can easily tell where the war zones are. Since the war in Ukraine started in 2022, there has been a surge in conflicts the world over. And since 2021, the proportion of the world braving conflicts has increased by 65%. That's nearly double the size of India. Some conflict hotspots are new, while others are persistent. From Myanmar and West Asia to Ukraine and Central Africa. As the number of war zones have increased, so have the no-fly zones. Safe airspace has narrowed down. So many flights have been forced to divert around conflict zones. For instance, since the war between Iran and Israel began, international flights have largely avoided a chunk of West Asia, especially over Iran, Iraq, Syria, Israel, and some areas in Jordan. Meanwhile, some flights have been forced to cancel certain routes altogether. For instance, most Western airlines have been banned from flying over Russia. So last year, British Airways and Virgin Atlantic shut their direct flights between London and Beijing. After all, commercial airlines don't have another option. As conflicts spread, pilots find themselves sharing airspace with drones and missiles. Like last year, when an Azerbaijan Airlines flight crashed in Kazakhstan, and dozens of people died. That plane was accidentally shot down by Russian air defenses. And there is another worrying trend in the art of modern warfare: GPS spoofing. Every plane uses GPS signals to navigate. Spoofing uses radio transmitters to override the signals and send false location to pilots. This is mostly done to confuse incoming drones and missiles in conflict areas. It is especially prevalent near Israel, Lebanon, and Egypt, as well as the Black Sea and Western Russia. But commercial flights can also fall victim to it. Last year, there was a 500% increase in spoofing. This affected about 1,500 flights per day. So flights are being forced to reroute. And this is a massive burden for both passengers and airlines. Air travelers are frequently met with delays, scheduling changes, and cancellations, while airlines are flying longer routes. This extends flight times and pushes up costs. For instance, flights between the Finnish capital Helsinki and Japan's Tokyo now take about 3.5 hours longer than before the war in Ukraine began. And of course, this is hurting the environment, because longer routes mean more fuel consumption and carbon emissions. So while conflicts are expanding, usable airspace is shrinking. And this has left many passengers wondering if this is the worst time to fly.
So tensions in West Asia have made flying unsafe. But despite that, India has undertaken a massive rescue operation. As tensions flared between Iran and Israel, India moved swiftly to bring its people home. It launched Operation Sindhu. Over 2,200 Indians have been evacuated from Iran and Israel so far. The evacuations come amid escalating violence. After US strikes on Iran's nuclear sites raised tensions in the region, India has used military and chartered flights for rescue. The operation spanned 4 borders: Iran, Jordan, Armenia, and Turkmenistan. Our next report brings you more details.
It has been a race against time. A ceasefire announced by Donald Trump was proving to be fragile, and West Asia remains on a knife's edge. In this uncertain window, India has moved fast to bring its citizens home. The rescue mission is called Operation Sindhu. It's now in full swing. Today alone, India evacuated over 200 nationals from Iran and more than 366 Indians from Israel. So far, over 2,200 citizens have been evacuated, all within a single week. It began soon after the U.S. launched airstrikes. U.S. forces targeted 3 of Iran's most protected nuclear facilities. Instantly, the region erupted. Iran and Israel began trading missiles and drones, targeting cities, military bases, and strategic sites. Thousands of Indians were still stranded across both countries. Indian officials swung into action. The Ministry of External Affairs launched multiple parallel missions. The first focus was on Iran. Special flights from Iran's Mashhad were arranged. They ferried back not just Indians, but one Sri Lankan citizen as well. Iran even lifted airspace restrictions to facilitate evacuations. On Friday night, a special flight landed in Delhi. It carried 290 Indians. The second flight arrived Saturday afternoon with 310. And the most recent flight touched down at 3:30 a.m. today with 292 on board. In total, 3 flights from Iran brought back nearly 900 passengers in under 4 days. In a similar way, India also moved to evacuate citizens from Israel. There were no direct flights, so a land bridge was used. Indians in Israel were moved by road into Jordan. From Amman, they boarded evacuation flights. Today, 2 flights arrived in Delhi. One chartered with 161 passengers, and another AC-17 military transport plane with 165 evacuees. These missions were also supported through Armenia and Turkmenistan. Flights from Yerevan and Ashgabat arrived last week. All of this under the banner of Operation Sindhu. It's a massive logistical operation, with flights coordinated across multiple countries. And the timing is critical, because even as Trump declared a ceasefire, the ground reality looks different. As of this afternoon, Israel and Iran were launching fresh strikes. Missiles were still being fired, with both sides blaming each other for violations. So, while there's talk of calm, the risk of renewed escalation remains high. India knows this, and that's why it's moving quickly to bring Indians back home to safety.
They say diplomacy is complicated, and negotiating ceasefire even more. It involves sensitive talks and subtle outreaches, but not for Donald Trump. The US president has turned diplomacy into social media rants. Subtlety is sure out. All caps messages are in. We saw that during the India-Pakistan conflict as well. In the middle of the fighting, Trump declared a ceasefire. He wasn't even mediating the conflict, yet he waded in. With Iran and Israel, he has done it again. The question is, what does this say about Trump's attitude? Our next report tells you.
Let's do an experiment. Take a reality TV star from the last century, add inflated ego and not so subtle traces of narcissism, surround him with yes men and yes women, and finally put him in the White House. What do you get? America's 47th president, Donald Trump.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
His idea of diplomacy is not subtle or restrained. It's shouting from rooftops.
No position to dictate that. Remember this.
Just look at his post after Iran attacked a US base in Qatar. Trump says Tehran got it out of their system. Well, newsflash. Iran isn't an angsty teenager or a drunk guy in a bar fight. It's a country of 90 million people at war. Now look at his ceasefire announcement. Why is the word peace in all caps? Or the word now? Or the word unlimited? Or the word promise? Is it some secret message? Because if it is, it's flying right over us.
We may be ordering.
Then came reports of alleged ceasefire violations. Once again, Commander in social media got on his phone. He said Israel would not drop bombs on Iran. Instead, the pilots would do a so-called plane wave to Iran and return to Israel. We reached out to an aviation expert to decode what a plane wave means, especially in the context of a war. Sad to report, he hasn't replied to our messages yet. Frankly, we don't think he ever will. Also, while on the subject, why is Israel in all caps? It's really bugging us. But jokes aside, these messages are a window to the president's style. He believes in erratic, unfinished diplomacy. The focus seems to be on claiming credit and cultivating his image as a peacemaker, not on the viability or details of the deal. Again, consider the latest ceasefire announcement. Trump said Iran would start the ceasefire first. Israel would start the ceasefire 12 hours after that. And 24 hours later, the war would officially end. This sounds less like a truce plan and more like a complicated recipe. That too for an undercooked pie. We saw this during the India-Pakistan conflict as well. Out of the blue, Donald Trump announced a ceasefire. He wasn't involved in the mediation. He wasn't part of the de-escalation talks. Yet he claimed credit for ending the fight. At the root of these efforts could be Trump's long-held ambition to win a Nobel Peace Prize. Last week, Pakistan nominated him for the award, and Trump rewarded them by serving lunch to Pakistan's army chief. It tells you everything about Trump's approach. Unfortunately, he's not on the Nobel shortlist. We're not sure you can win the prize for ending a war that you took part in. Trump's goal isn't peace, it is credit. So he rushes into announcing half-baked, unsettled deals. And when things go wrong, he does this.
You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what they're doing. Do you understand that?
We agree, Mr. President, exactly what you said. In all caps too.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. First images from world's largest digital camera reveal galaxies and cosmic collisions. Palestinians seek aid in Gaza as the hunger crisis worsens in the Strip. And a truck driver hangs precariously over a collapsed bridge in China. Finally, taking you back in history, on this day in 1948, the Soviets blockaded West Berlin. Stalin cut off all land and river transit between West Berlin and West Germany. Panic set in as its population worried about shortages of food, water and aid. The Allies responded with a massive airlift to come to West Berlin's aid. Leaving you on that note, thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.
So Comrade Stalin took a leaf from Hitler's book. He matched the Soviet army of 15 millions against Finland's 30,000. He sent the Red Navy from Kronstadt to bombard and occupy. Soviet bombers roared over Helsinki with death and destruction. They aimed bombs at the magnificent railway station, but the Sky Raiders missed the station and raised...
Someone